So please, what is the history of improvisation models for polyphony and that sort of thing?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. So we can, for instance, we can turn to the first example that I have here. I was made aware of this by the project that Philippe Canguilhem ran quite a few years back. This is a plain chant method published by a certain Abbé Bonhour in Toulouse in 1840. Now you maybe
Oh,
know better than
1840. Mm,
you know maybe better than me what was going on in 1840. I imagine Gounod or something like this.
mm,
But when you look at it, first of all, you see plain chant neumes being used to write a
yes.
four-part piece. Then what you see is a type of polyphony in um, three five chords that is really characteristic of sort of Renaissance falso bordone.
Mm,
There are a couple of spicy chords. I don't know if they are a mistake, but for instance, when you look at the syllable tu of venturus, you
yeah.
see that a B sharp clashing with a C,
Yeah.
a B natural clashing with a C. Some other weird things happen here, but you know the basic structure that there are fifths and octaves and thirds between the voice of the dessus, which is the tenor voice, and the bass. This is the same procedure that appeared in the late 15th century as falso bordone, which we know from all the ecclesiastic falso bordones, but we know it from the villancico repertoire in Spain. We know it omnipresent. Yeah,
Mm.
and apparently, in 1840, this was still a way to sing the Requiem Mass. So you have
Ah,
some to do with the history of, I don't know, almost 400 years of a
right.
particular practice surviving.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, really 400 years. That's like us now talking about the Renaissance no, the 17th the Renaissance or the Renaissance. That's
Yeah,
but for them, 400 years is just to the 15th century.
yeah, and I think that the people, of course, didn't have the same kind of historical consciousness that we have in the modern era. They were just doing this. It was not a question of out with the old, in with the new. In certain rural areas, they kept using whatever music was
Yeah,
fitting and had a purpose. So you
yeah.
see examples of this, and you see them also earlier period. If you turn the slide, you will find a little example of a piece that I wrote about recently, which is from Nijmegen, so from Holland,
Ah,
Universiteitsbibliotheek, originally from Amsterdam,
yep,
from the Beguinage, which was a female monastic, sort of pseudo monastic community. And this manuscript was written around 1610. So we're bang in the middle of the Reformation.
yep.
You must imagine the begins are being, the Protestants cannot really evict them from their homes because they're
Yep.
privately owned, but Catholicism is really frowned upon, etc.
Hmm.
And then what do they write? In terms of devotional music, they write music that could be, well, if you look at the first stuff, for instance, could be straight out of a 13th century manuscript. So
Yeah,
it's again a enormous time lapse. Uh, of course, in a religious community where keeping the old has its own value,
yeah.
but nevertheless, it must have been important to them. And these pieces they are not old pieces that are being kept being copied. They are really new pieces. This is as much from 1610 as I don't know what else was published in 1610, maybe
So are
Monteverdi,
you saying
Orfeo.
that they composed it in the same manner as it was composed 200 years, like something
Yeah.
like that?
uh, I'm convinced, reading also the secondary literature about this, there are no known versions of this piece before this manuscript, that it was a new composition.
Wow. Wow. So not
And
only did they maintain the music, they maintained the tradition of music making uh, from that period. Incredible.
yeah,
That's really interesting.
so there are pockets and communities which keep these traditional ways of music making, and it happens that ways of crafting music from
Yeah.
really early periods survive really late. And
Yeah.
this was my way of thinking a bit about this. Faut-il vraiment découper l'histoire en tranches? The French title is a little bit more interesting than the English one. Do we really have to cut up history into slices?
Yeah.
This was sort of, at some point, this became my manifesto. Um,
I mean,
because you
it's not true that it's not the periods are just not true if you look at the all these examples.
No, I think that they may be helpful in some sense as a sort of the pegs that you put for hanging clothes, that people class one type of phenomenon there, sort of
Right.
like how to get your way around chronology,
Yeah.
but is terribly unhelpful in
Mm.
other respects.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a good
so
way of
you,
putting it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the tradition doesn't care whether you call it Renaissance or Baroque.